All right, everybody, welcome to another live Torg chat. We're going to be talking about the source book, finally. We kind of delayed it a few sessions, just, getting our schedules all ready to go. And I'll start this off with a warning that I live in Tucson, Arizona, and I've got a monsoon blowing in. There's a 5% chance that lightning will take out my power or wind will take out my communications. And if I go out, this whole stream is over because I'm the OBS connection. So if I'm replaced by a crackling screen, the storm got me, everyone.
Literally rolled a 1 and disconnected.
So joining me for Sourcebook Chat, I'll give them each a moment to introduce themselves. Let's start with Greg Nagler.
Hi, I'm Greg Nagler, and I'm the co-writer of the Aysle source book with Dominick down also on your screen. I'm in Chicago, Illinois, and previously I worked on The Dark Eye and D6.
What part of D6?
D6 was owned for a while by Purgatory Press, and they produced their own set of games. It was in between West End and its current owner, which is Gallant Knight Games. And they did a whole set of, D6 Space and D6 Horror and D6 Fame and whatnot.
Yeah.
Which ended with Fires of Amatsumara, which was kind of their Firefly-esque space scenario, which it did several chapters of.
Very cool. And Dominick, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right. Dominick I'm out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, kind of a local fixture here, but I've also done some other independent projects, such as a part of the Grand Temple of Jing. Eventually going to try to work out some of my own stuff, but for now, just happy to get this done, because this is one of the areas I was really into at Torg, and wouldn't you know it, all my announcements start popping up as soon as it goes live.
Awesome.
First few pop-ups.
Yes.
So I'm going to roll through some of the questions that we had that came up on the update and from some of the other updates. Then I got some of my own, plus anything else that comes up. So the first question that got asked, or at least that I'm going to ask, was how deep into the history of Aysle do we delve into the source book? They were mostly asking, like, do we talk a lot about before Uthorian arrives, or the time between Uthorian's arrival and, when Pella goes down,
Yeah. So this book focuses mainly on the realm of Aysle, which is here on Earth, as opposed to the cosm. However, if you look at the backstories of many of the main characters, like Pella and Uthorian, the Reaper, and others, you do get the information that part of their story, which goes back sometimes thousands of years, and the cosm, but it's not really a gazetteer of the disc-like world of Aysle, and its 10,000-year history and its gods and whatnot in totality. So it's a lot more of a focus on what's going on now, what's happened in the first year, and especially like the main characters from the Delphi Council and Aysle, the court of Ardenne, and the government, the British government and whatnot. So it doesn't go that far back, but we do have little clues and hints and some interesting tidbits from Aysle.
Yeah, I did make a couple of references to some of the prehistory when it came to how the various the main Eilish gods came to be with their, but it's just a little passing reference here and there. It wasn't anything really in depth. Talking about shattering of the magic sword and who Brak is and why he was important enough to be considered a god, even though he was a giant.
Awesome. Yeah, and this was a conscious design decision that we made, and it's one that we reached partway through, like after our initial outline, was where we realized, like, one of the reasons that the original Aysle, like, for me, it never really landed. Like, it's got all this really cool stuff in it, but it always felt so disconnected from the rest of Torg because it's all so about the cosm of Aysle, but that you're not going to the cosm. Like you're in England or Scandinavia, not Aysle itself. So we realized that that's the disconnect, and what we need to focus on hardcore is what does Aysle look like here on Earth, and we can talk about the cosm, but it has to be in terms of how it's affecting the stuff that you're interacting with day after day after day. So we tried to be very, very practical about how that was coming out. We don't really want to do the Silmarillion. Silmarillion's great, and all that, but that's not what this book is for.
I know for my games, every time we had Eilish characters where you get like 2 or 3 in the group, there would always be some excuse to try to go run back to the cosm and get stuff because it was so
right, because that's where all the information is. You're like, well, that's all where the stuff. I don't know anything about London.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, especially the old Aysle often had a lot of really cool stuff on it, which wasn't actually on Earth.
Right.
Yeah, you really have to kind of work to wedge it in, like one, greater giant, that's from this, forgotten continent happens to be here.
Right. And that's, where legends have helped us a lot in terms of bringing all sorts of crazy magical stuff into Earth, and also the entire idea of the underground invasion, where stuff's just coming up everywhere. So it's like, great, the whole place is a mess. There's adventure everywhere. So let's see. 2. Will arcane knowledges survive in this version in some form?
In some form, yes. Not. I mean, you're not going to have a dedicated metal mage or a dedicated magic mage or whatever, but they are all going to be grouped in their various towers. Yes, tower status is back.
Yeah.
So when you know 8 spells, you can call yourself a tower mage. So
yeah, we've got
and exactly how many towers depends on whether you're a specialist or a generalist.
Yeah. Yep. We've got the towers. Some of the things that used to be controlled by that, what we've done is we've crafted perks very similar to what we've done with the religions in previous books, where it's like, hey, you can be a general miracle user and you take miracles and you get these. Or you can take this very specific, Jim Hadar or whatever, and it's going to give you this little extra thing and a different set of miracles. And you can take both, or you can take just the one and be pure. And we did something very similar with a lot of the magic. And that's how we handle things like necromancers, who they might have a very different spell list, but they've got access to things that a generalist may or may not have, and or even the pure wizard, with spellbook, where they've got tons of spells, but it works for them in a slightly different way.
So you can either get more of something at a cost, or you can just get your basic stuff.
Yeah. Spread it out like a shotgun.
Yeah. Shotgun or rifle, take your pick.
All right. Will Aysle natives have some kind of magical cantrips or boosts? Since in the old one, kind of everybody got ads for free. And I'll talk on the design side why we didn't do ads for free. But can you guys tell me how we still kind of try to capture that piece of flavor?
Okay, so you don't get free ads, but anyone who's in Aysle can get access to cantrips. These are basically small little spells. You basically need the skill at somewhere between 8 and 12, depending on the cantrip. And if you're in Aysle, you can cast them. You don't need to learn them. They're not. You don't have to take a perk to get them. You can just do them. And if you take a perk, and you're an Irish character, you can take the cantrips with you when you go to other realms.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and the cantrips, they're mostly non-combat. There's a few that have some utility. They don't have a good or outstanding result. They're pretty much, they work or they don't. But they're mostly utility because we wanted that feel of magic, right? And you know, like I want to be able to light a fire by snapping my fingers. Okay, that's something you should be able to do, and you shouldn't have to burn a damn spell slot to do it.
Yeah, I want to create a little wind to blow things around a little bit. You know, not anything major, but if you just want a little wind to kind of push things along a little bit, or just to have some fun, you know, that nice gentle breeze around you. Go ahead.
Yeah, because originally we were working on a system, an alternate system for cantrips that was going to be in the core book, and we played around with it, and we didn't like it, so we pulled it out. And this is kind of its more modern form. In the original form, it was if you had adds in one of the different magic types, there was a base thing you could do with it. Like if you had apparition, you could lift objects with it, just period. You didn't need a spell for that. You could, but it kind of got twitchy. Like it was a little bit too easy to push the envelope and break things. So we're like, all right, we got to pull back on that. And the cantrips have been a nice way to reintroduce some of those magical options without maybe breaking things.
And it makes it very Aysle as opposed to, you know, something that every other realm can do. Because Aysle's, you know, magical axiom is so high,
Yep.
It just makes more sense in that context. Whereas, you know, from core Earth, if you could do magic, you know, you don't really have kind of a cantrip sort of background because it's so much harder to do there.
So let's see. There's a couple little side questions I'm going to jump on before they scroll past. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, actually, so someone mentioned the birth dates. So just so you guys know, we've got perks. Born to X. And you can only take one born to X perk, but that gives you the bonuses that you used to get from the birth charts. So that's how we handled that. And like in general, that's what you're going to see, everyone, is we don't want character creation to be that different depending on where you are, but perks take on so much of that load, so we can offload it and do that. The possibilities, people ask what the Eilish possibilities do. Nothing's final until the last day. At the moment, one of the things they do, because it's something I desperately want them to do, is if you're spending it on non-Eilish stuff, you can enchant non-Eilish items. So that's how you get your +1, you know, 9mm and things like that. It's got another effect if you are doing something already with an Eilish axiom. I can't remember what that is though. Let's see. Oh no, I can't scroll. There we go. Scrolling up. Sorry. You guys talk for a second while I look at the questions we missed. Let's see. Do people inherently know that you can do a cantrip upon entering Aysle? As long as you meet the minimums for the cantrip, and that doesn't mean adds, that means minimum. So if you've got like a high will or mind, you're going to be fine. You can just do it. Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a blank zone like the white zone in the living land? Honestly, not really. We didn't stake out an area that says we're not going to touch this because, I mean, there are some areas that are more detailed than others, but
yeah, I mean, there's kind of like a little more like you know, do not, you know, go to this dark realm kind of area.
Yeah.
But
the closest we've got is the.
There's no wasteland or anything like that, or, you know, area barred to players, or
yeah.
You know, that's cordoned off for some special project. No.
Yeah, the closest we've got is the English Channel Tunnel, but that's that's not something we're setting aside for people to make up. Like that's something we're just saying don't go yet. We've got big plans for that. I'd say probably the closest we've got is Northern Scandinavia. Has that just it's all gloom storms and spider webs and undead, and you're just like, no one even goes there. There's no reason.
Not so clearly spelled out there, but it's not really forbidden territory either.
Yeah. All right, let's see here. If I missed a question, don't hesitate to repost it, and we'll get back to it. While I'm looking, This is one that was asked a couple of sessions ago, but applies to the Aysle source book, so I'll throw it to you guys. Why is Uthorian a cool villain? What makes him dangerous?
Wow, that's a big question.
Yeah, it is.
Uthorian is sort of the balance between a manipulator and a hands-on kind of guy. While many of the High Lords are very, behind the scenes, working for their minions, he likes to travel around in his persona as Thorfinn Bajani, the barbarian king. Go out into the field periodically, and he also has many different host bodies he uses. Priests of Korbaal, and a number of other minions that he can basically possess at almost any one time, anywhere across the realm, which his darkness device gives him the ability to do. So he could literally, be present with the other players, perhaps, in secret or, taunting them directly, as opposed to just, sending one minion after another. But at the same time, if he doesn't have time for, this particular group of Storm Knights because he doesn't think they're that important, which he generally won't at first, but after a while he gets really interested. Then, he will, play the master manipulator, and his chief minions are also, sort of a great extension of how he works. So he's a lot of fun to play with because you can go a lot of different directions. At the same time, in his corner of the world, he's a little bit backed into a corner by the other High Lords. The Cyber Pope has really cramped his style, and
Darkhold.
The messy invasion there has made things difficult. Plus Ardenate coming up from Aysle, and basically stalling his invasion, have made him kind of delightfully desperate too. So he's willing to try some crazy stuff, and at the same time he's kind of playing catch up in the war with the other High Lords. So there's a lot going on with him at any particular time, and he's perhaps one of the more unpredictable High Lords.
Dominick, you got anything to add there?
Well, I mean, when I was looking through there, it's kind of like like the Harry Potter thing where he basically is using people as like the Horcruxes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Basically, what he did to Ardenay, what he did to Thorfinn Gianni, and and others yet to be named, and stuff like that. And so that's going to be part of the strategy of dealing is find out who he's got in that position and kind of removing him from them.
Yeah. So
and on top of that, his darkness device is also very temperamental. He's having more difficulty controlling it. And where you were a game master had some rather, let's say, morally flexible characters, his darkness device may be interested in making them High Lord one day. So.
Yeah. So for me, the most interesting question about Uthorian, and it's one that we don't necessarily answer fully. Like, this is one that we're letting play out over time. To me, the most interesting thing is he's actually the most trustworthy and loyal of all the High Lords.
Oh yeah.
Like, he's been with the Gaunt Man for a long time. The Gaunt Man's given him a lot of opportunities, and in some ways I think the Gaunt Man, he wants Uthorian to have this power because it's useful to have this loyal henchman doing his bidding, but he's also terrified of Uthorian because he's got all this power, and one of these days Uthorian's got to decide he's ready to be the boss rather than the henchman, and that's the huge question is that day today, or is it, when's it coming? And so that makes him super interesting. Like, how long is he gonna play nice before he just, throws up his hands and is like, right, that's it. You're all toast.
Yeah, and it leads right back into the competition with the other High Lords, because all the other High Lords know he's the most loyal to the Gaunt Man of all of them, because very few of them are actually loyal to the Gaunt Man. And so do they clip Uthorian to try to reduce his power, or the Gaunt Man's power, or do they foster some sort of mistrust between the two? So there's a higher, almost, meta story that's going on with the High Lords that you can get into.
Yeah, and I think the thing that makes him the most dangerous, and people have seen his stats, so they're not surprised by this, but we tried to give every High Lord, when you face them, they're going to have some different specialties, so that the battle against them is going to feel different and have different stakes, right? Like Baruka is a brute. He is just going to murder your face. Mobius is a schemer. He's going to take control of initiative. He's going to ruin your hand. He's going to do like all these things to manipulate the battle. Uthorian, I mean, he's tough and all, but he's beatable. But he gets super dangerous once you've beaten him, because just like we saw happen with Ardenne, it's like, okay, cool, he goes down. Now the real test happens. And it's one contest. And if you don't beat him with an outstanding result, you're dead. He now owns your body, and your soul has been ejected, and like you're done. And that's terrifying. It's like, okay, you got to beat him, and then you got to beat him, push that soul out, and that's the only way to really win. And that makes him a handful. Let's see here. Can we please share a cool new faith perk that characters outside of Aysle can take? None jump to mind. I'd have to look at the document. So one of the things that we did design-wise, right? So Living Land was huge faith. So any faith perks that we're going to spill over are going to go there, plus the specific ones for that. We didn't really have as many unique faith perks in Nile Empire because they've got faith, they've got stuff, but it's not their specialty. And it's kind of the same with Aysle. Like, they've got strong faith, and we have new faith perks, but most of them are designed to mimic things that are happening within the specific clerics and paladins and faiths of Aysle. See, how many new darkness perks? Boy, I should have had the darn source book in front of me for this. At least 6 darkness perks, and they're cool.
I guess you could be born to darkness.
Yeah, born to darkness, necromancer. We've got some assassin stuff. Oh man, darkness is where it's at. Too bad it leads you to being an NPC.
Yeah.
Join the darkness. We have cookies.
It's new take.
And possibilities.
Yeah.
And how many new light perks? Fewer than darkness perks. I think there's 4 or 5 new light perks. Because they were better represented in the core book. We've got you covered on, for light, but darkness was the one that needed some help. Will there ever be a spell on par with Mystic Star in a source book? I don't know Mystic Star. Dominick, that's probably your...
Okay. Old Torg stuff. It was Conjuration Magic at a 21, damage 30, plus 10 accuracy modifier. Yeah,
wow.
It was just, basically, it was the gravitic ray gun before the Akashan shell.
We've got some pretty awesome high level, high requirement spells, but I don't think we're ever gonna have a world beater, no damage 30, anything like that.
I'm not even certain the High Lords have a spell like that.
Right.
Possibly.
Do they need it?
Well, but yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anything that a High Lord can have, though, is something that players are going to be able to get by the time they hit Gamma. So,
yeah.
So let's see.
Maybe a good spell researcher can do it.
Yeah. Well, and so that's going to be a question that I got to answer, which I'll do in a little bit. People ask about spell research and how that works. I'll give you the high level view rather than the details, because on the bright side, everybody, in about a week we'll all have the files to play with. So, but I'll give you a high level on creating your own spells and how we're doing that. And I'll warn you, it's a very different approach from the old book, which I think some people will be thrilled by and some people will be disappointed by. But We'll talk about it. So this one came up in the original one. People asking, what is the feel of Aysle? And like, how do you describe it when someone walks into in an Eilish zone? What are keywords that you're using to tell people this is Aysle, and how did that kind of translate and make it into the source book?
Yeah, that's a really good question because Aysle is high fantasy, so in a way it's been kind of done to death, from D&D and Lord of the Rings and oh my God, Game of Thrones and everything else. So to a certain degree, Aysle is perhaps even more magical than most realms because it permeates everyday life. So as you move in, into like the mixed zones and whatnot, I mean, it will look, fantasy-esque, but the more and more, or the deeper you get into the reality of Aysle, the more you start to see those little touches of, glowing lights and plants that seem to almost react to you as you go by. And anyone who is magical will just, feel the raw power around them. But really, it's, sort of when, things get dramatic that it gets to be a lot more interesting. Because there are a lot of ways that magic can suddenly infuse items. There's lots
Clankers.
of just around, like, obviously, the introduction to cantrips, just instantaneous magic if that even if you're not from this realm.
Right. Yeah. Even the barmaid knows magic. That's.
Yeah. Though there is kind of a class structure to it. So while a lot of people there are a lot of hedge mages around, and alchemists around, and so on and so forth. The real non-cantrip stuff is still wielded by people who are educated, who have the wealth and power to do so. But that's also changing. One of the things that is kind of important about the new realm of Aysle is ideas from the outside, from core Earth and the other realms, are permeating the realm and are basically changing people's thought process. Especially anyone who was core Earth originally was transformed to Aysle. They have a greater sense of democracy.
What? Democracy? What's that?
Yeah, no. Well, but they think to themselves that maybe things can be a little bit different. But then the practical use of magic, because Eilish mages that have come forward, had no concept. Well, maybe we could take magic and come up with some kind of like telecommunications network. They never thought that way before, but those ideas are starting to come in. So now they're sort of trying to retrofit the magic they have to concepts which are not magical initially, and just trying to create technology out of magic. And that's kind of where things are moving toward, by the end of year one. So there's some really interesting possibilities of how magic can be exploited in brand new ways. And I think that's a great place that players can go, because then player can say, well, maybe I could make some kind of magical cell phone-esque sort of thing that worked in Aysle. Of course, that will create great contradictions in any other realm, but you could probably do it if you had some clever ideas and you were good at browbeating your game master.
Dominick?
Yeah, like the Crystal Ball News Network.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, CBN.
Yeah.
Yes.
You got anything to add?
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that because Aysle is a part of Torg and you're interacting with all these things, you get all these weird interactions with people doing stuff. Like, yeah, I had a group even in the original Torg where basically the New York City cop goes and like, oh, we find a vending machine, goes gets stuff, and the elf mage is horrified. The elf mage is horrified because he had a Sprite with him. That's what he was drinking it, and it's like, why are you drinking my Fey cousins?
Sparkling water.
And it's just all this insane stuff. Got into a whole argument. The Cyber Knight jumps in and it's like, well, sprites are heretical. Of course they should be users made for something useful, like a drink or something like that. And then and finally the whole situation is about to wind down. that's when the runner comes up and it's like, hey, you guys need cheering up. Hey, I got some pixie sticks here.
Nice.
I always like this story because it makes me think about things like, is Pixie or Sprite blood carbonated? I bet it is. It's effervescent, I bet. Refreshing.
So, I had a question scroll by from Dave Haynes about the heirloom perk, how powerful it can be. So, one of the things that we do with magic items is we do give a value level for them, if you're creating them or finding them, so you can assign a value. And what we wanted to do with the heirloom perk was for that character who's built around something, like, whether you're Arthurish or something else, like I start with this magic sword. This is part of my character concept. I don't want to find this. I want to have it day one. So I think we said value level 20. I can't remember, but we set a value level. As long as it's that or less, that's fine. You've got it at character creation. Off you go. That's one that you can negotiate with your GM too. Like, hey, like, here's the horrible things you can do to me if you give me, a slightly better item. Another common question is new races in Aysle. In the core book, we don't go into any new races because, in the new Aysle, we've kind of got the big three. There are other races, but they are rare, mostly because they did not come through with the Army of Light in large numbers. So we're going to cover some of them in the supplemental materials. For example, at the back of the Cracking Tales of Aysle, we'll do centaurs. And you'll see that they'll all have that unique disadvantage where it's like, hey, look, there's only going to be one of these in the game. So if you're playing it, that's it. And that's how we're going to handle those kind of smaller ones. And we didn't really want to push them in the source books, essentially, but we'll find places for them as we go.
So no minotaurs yet, but they might be coming later.
Yeah, exactly.
There's year two.
Right, yeah, and we want to leave stuff, we want to make sure our bases are covered, and then, drill deep as we go. Let's see here. People are saying never underestimate the willingness to be punished for a good item. Oh, I know. Oh, so people are asking about Ardenay sneakers, right? So this has been a point of contention since, day one that I find utterly hilarious. They're like, no, they're not magic sneakers. They're just comfortable. She just really likes the tread and the spring on them. And, when she's just hanging out at court, they're way better than heels, and she'll risk the disconnection for that. She can take it. Now, in combat, she'll kick those suckers off, like in a flat second. And,
Why are they better in combat than heels?
Well, but, they also do for surges, they would blow her out. So she's savvy in the ways of reality. She'd get rid of those in the watch, But for just hanging around, oh yeah, she's going to chill in something comfortable.
They were a gift, as I recall.
Yeah, well, and yeah, it was when the art came through, it was an embellishment that we loved. We said, yeah, you know what? That's Torg. Of course she would wear sneakers. Why wouldn't she? I mean, and she's spending most of her time in a mixed zone anyway, so fine, whatever. Let's see. Yeah, Nike promotions, co-branded. That'd be great. Get some of that sweet, sweet sneaker money. Let's see. So here's one I wanted to ask, which is, and we'll start with Dominick on this one, since Greg, you've gotten to go first on the other ones. What were some of the special challenges that you faced, for your additions to this book? And how'd you overcome those? Because I did not make it easy on you guys, This is your chance to throw me under the bus.
Well, my thing was I wanted to try to capture the feel of most of the spells, getting that done, and also get into, explore some of the some of the higher axiom stuff, and and so what I ended up having to do a lot of times was okay, the axiom charts had like one line in them. At each breakdown. And admittedly, it's better than having like blanks at various spots. We know there was something happened here, and we don't know what. But we had that. But it's like when the only thing that it mentions for like 21 or something like that is that wow, apportation can now move super tankers or something like that. Okay, what does that mean? and you basically being able to translate a lot of that. It's like, okay, well, I figure super tanker, well, it's maybe like 50, 60 tons. I designed a spell, didn't make it in, got cut due to space. Two, basically, you can push a super tanker around.
Yeah, right. Well, and this is where I'm the meanie, right? Because like spells like boat hand and things that, or the one that makes fish jump into your net. It's like, all right, these are cool and they're flavorful, but no one's going to burn a perk to learn that, so forget it. Like, we got other stuff to focus on. Like, let's keep it, like, on the stuff that's, like, really practical. And later on, we might add some more colorful, eccentric stuff.
Yeah. And if you really want to catch a fish, just zap it with a hold animal and then reach down and grab it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. As I recall, I also made it pretty hard on you because you went and like did the math to back engineer all of our spells and the values related around them and do like this whole like sub engine so that we could check our balance, you know. And when we did that, we did it not via math but via play. Like we're like, okay, I'm a strong believer in that formulas can be cheated and broken, but you just do it. I mean, sometimes you're still going to have misses, but it's going to be feel better. But you did the math, man.
Oh yes, because that's one of the things is that for the original Torg, I took that formula from original Torg and built it, redid every spell in original Torg under the formula. See there, and one of the weird things I found is that Mystic Star we were talking about by the formula is underpowered.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah. Well, when you figure it out and attach all the theorems and stuff to it to reduce its cost and stuff like that, it should have been like 3 or 4 points easier to cast.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
Right.
Maybe we need to do something else.
Right. Exactly. It's like, yeah, there's always those things that fall in the margin. So, and actually, let Greg answer that, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we do spell creation.
Okay, so going back to the original question about what was so challenging from my end, the same thing on things like backstory and characters and timeline and so on and so forth. One, there was stuff from old Aysle that was cut that I liked. We're not using that, and I was like, oh.
Some of it reappeared in Revenge of the Caradon, so yay.
Yeah, some did. You know, there were a lot of flavor and variety, and I'd actually since I started very early in the project, I had started writing stuff about what was going on in the cosm of Aysle that then later on had to be chucked because we're like, well, we're just going to focus on the realm.
Yeah, and that's what helped me figure it out, though. Is like, you got all this great stuff, and I'm like, this is really cool, but I super don't care. Light bulb moment.
That was wrong. You don't care about my work?
I know, that was just it. Like, and that was what hurt, because I'm like, this is cool. This is interesting stuff, but it has nothing to do with what I would do as a GM in Aysle, and that was the light bulb moment. Like, it took that to figure out that was the disconnect with the old book. Like, I had no idea. Like, and there was a problem we were trying to solve, but we didn't. And, like, that, like, drew the line. Like, oh, like, I get it. And that's why I felt bad. Like, okay, yeah, that's really good stuff, man, but I can't use, like, any of it. You know, like, I'll take the words, but...
Most of it got used. Just at least stuff that I liked got cut. Like, it happens. The book's only so long.
Yeah. And the cool thing is we do have it like tucked aside in our Bible, and it filters back in other ways, when it becomes appropriate.
Some of it does, yeah. So the challenge of, having this world that I knew so well, because like Dominick, I ran a ton of Aysle in the 90s because, of course, I had 7 players at one point, and I think 4 of them were from Aysle and 1 were other. So I ran a ton of Aysle, and I knew it inside out. And in some ways, I was trying to bring back stuff, but just working within the frame of no, we're not going to do any world of Aysle stuff. We're just going to do Realm of Aysle. That was the real challenge. That and breathing new life into high fantasy with trying to bring in the other concepts from the other realms and maybe doing things a little bit differently. Because as much as I loved old Aysle, in many ways it was too cluttered. So I was kind of really glad working in that framework where we didn't have 10 different types of dragons and 5 different types of fairies and 6 different types of giants and whatnot. Allowed me to focus on one type of giant, one type of fairy, so on and so forth when I was doing the backstory end of it. And especially with the characters where I could mention some really interesting things that were going on back in the cosm and then bring that out in their story. But then we didn't have to go into all the miasma of it.
Right, and it makes them hooks, which then make it useful at the table. Like a hook is great, but yeah. So I'm going to ask Dominick this question, and it's going to be a good segue into what I'm got to talk about. So the question is, in Old Torg, what spell was more powerful than Mystic Star, according to the formula workout? Was there anything that beat it?
What were... Oh, you really want to bring up, call it my 400-page...
I mean, if you don't have one on the tip of your tongue, like some GMs, they would work that through and they'd be like, Greater Fireball, damn Greater Fireball, something like that.
Oh, God. No, some of the nastier stuff with stuff that my players would come up with. It's like...
with the formula.
Once the Aysle book came out, I ended up with 3 people who wanted to design their own spells. And one of them, is like, oh, we want to attack your charisma and do damage off your charisma. And naturally, hardly anyone, any of the monsters had charisma we're speaking of, and so it's like, or spirit, and it's like, oh yeah, so we're going to attack that. So I had to actually build all sorts of little things in there, like, okay, if you're going to build a spell that attacks spirit, your mechanism has to be death, because you're basically trying to obliterate them as opposed to just killing them, and and all this other stuff. And
cool. And that'll segue into creating spells for people. And the way we wanted to do this, and this is a very table experience rather than a go home and do a worksheet experience, which is already super different from the old one. The old one, it felt like a real magic manual, well, stand in this part of the room when you do this, and, under this star, and maybe this will happen. And it was really, really cool, but also, it was a chore, right? If I just...
It's very cumbersome.
Yeah, exactly. So we wanted to keep it light, and we wanted to keep it practical, and we wanted to keep it as something that you would use. And to that end, in general, how it works is, you have to have an empty spell slot. You have to be able to know a spell, and you have not assigned a spell to it. So normally you take a new spell perk or one of the ones that offers new spells, and that's going to give you the slot to do it. Once you've got somewhere to learn it, then you need time, usually at the end of a session where you're going to have time during the reset is where you do it. And you can burn leftover possibilities, unused magic items, and other things to start doing your research. When you do your research, you are creating, within certain guidelines, there's a couple parameters, right? A few of the parameters come from spells you already know. If you want it to be instant, you got to have an instant spell. If you want it to be permanent, you have to have a permanent spell, and so on. Some of them are way more open because one of the things that is challenging about formulas is if you do it as a formula, then that means every spell has to fit in that formula, and no spells that aren't covered by the formula exist. And it's magic. It can do friggin' anything you can think of, and we don't want to have to build a formula that can do, infinite things. We want to leave that open, and then it's experimentation. So you build your stats. You say, okay, here's what I'm going for casting difficulty. Here's what I want for effect and good and outstanding. If I've got any extra backlash that comes if I cast it or whatever. And you set all this up, you write this, and then you're going to give it to the GM. You pay your cost, whether it's going to work or not. You pay the cost, you give it to the GM, and then you're going to make your test. Hamana, let me try my spell, for a couple days and see if it blows up and costs me more or whatever. And when the GM gets it, first the GM's got to decide, it just might not be possible. And the great thing is the GM doesn't have to tell you, the player, that. They can just be like, no. And there's a skill roll, that happens, and it either blows up, in which case, no spell, try again next session, or it works, and if it works, it becomes an unstable spell, and you got to use it in your next sessions to try and get good at it, and if it blows up during those, you got to go refine, and so on. And if you get it out, once you get it outstanding, you're like, okay, no, this one works now. And what we want people to do is have to make sure that it at least doesn't just blow up because the GM says no. Aim high on your downsides, and then over time, try again. Let me try and knock the same effects, knock the casting difficulty down by 2. Hey, it's stable. That still works. Cool, that's a better spell now. My improved fireball is 1 better than the book's one. Because the GM's like, yeah, all right, that's cool. And we want it to be very interactive, to where you're risking it in the field, you're experimenting, and it could blow up, but if it doesn't blow up, you're getting these personalized spells that are maybe better than existing ones, or do something that we never thought of. And then hopefully we'll have a good mechanism in Infiniverse for people to share what they've come up with the same overall, every GM's going to have their own, no, not at my table. There's no way I'm letting that spell in. And
no fish grab.
Right. Well, if you want to make fish grab, fine, go for it, What are you going to do with it? Grab some fish? It's like, hey, in our campaign, every foe we fight are made our fishmen. So that's the most powerful spell ever. Denied. But that's the general idea of it, is experiment, refine, it goes back and forth, and you gotta test it in the field, essentially, before it will become stable.
There's no Mystic Star, but there are Mystic Cards.
Well, and you can try Mystic Star, and the cool thing is, you're like, yeah, I want this damage 30 spell that does all this stuff. And then you first turn it in, and the GM's just like, all right, try it. Oh, yep, it blows up. All right, well, maybe if I make the casting difficulty 30, okay, it still blows up. Well, maybe if we do this, And eventually you're going to find one that, between the roll and getting it to where the GM's like, all right, that actually feels right. You'll get it. It'll happen. Let's see here. Yeah. Talking about space. A lot of things would have been ideally exist in the RAM. People outside saying, hey, there's a bunch of stuff that would have been great to have in the core rulebook. Yeah, that's true, but honestly, it was 350 pages. I'm, to this day, astonished at what we got in there, covering the main cosms. I still feel strongly, you can run this game just fine with that book. And we wanted that to be true. That everything we did from there, it's going to add detail and options and things like that. but none of them are going to overwhelm what was in the core book. None of them are going to override it. They're just going to be alternate. So that's an interesting one. So in the core book, we've got our basic magic items. When Law of Enchantment kicks in, roll a d20, get some stuff. Dominick built this much bigger table. It's actually like 8 tables. And we say, like, you can use either one. Like this, the old table, you can use it, or go to the new expanded one. It's got cool new options. It's not necessarily better or worse. It's just different. So it's your option. And those are cool tables, by the way, Dominick. Well done.
And yes, and I did put a little bit of mingling and stuff like that with in the gear section with broomsticks, broomsticks, because hey, it's like it landed in England. Of course, somebody's going to ask for a broomstick, and everyone just kept asking for it so much. It's like, okay, some enchanters like, well, let's see if it works. Boom, here we go. Flying broomstick. I guess it does work here.
So let's see. There's a question I missed. Does Aysle intrude on Tharkold? Do we have any Aysle Tharkold mixed zones? Yes, we do. I see people thinking, is like, yep. So this is one of the irritation points between Cernod and Uthorian, because with Cernod's little nuclear accident that spilled junk all over their side of the wasteland, some of that was territory that Uthorian was supposed to take and has hesitated to take, because when you start getting mixed zones, stuff is kind of bad for both sides. Like, no one likes a mixed zone, and he's eventually sucked it up and made some mixed zones with Tharkold. And as we discovered with Cyber Papacy, demons love Aysle. It's their favorite place in the world. Strong magic makes demons happy. So
yeah, I mean, if magic's a part of your system, of course you're gonna like high magic. And
well, especially when magic's dying there, where they're like, this place sucks, but look at that 24 axiom over there. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and the next level you get to keep your technology, it's even better.
Someone noted, is that how Cernod's pronounced? Well, that's how I pronounce it. When we get to Tharkold, we'll probably do a how do you pronounce Cernod, because people could be doing it way different than me. Yeah, now that Tharkold has intruded upon Uthorian's expansion plans, where will he go? The answer to that question is tied directly to how loyal is he going to stay. We're at the 5 minutes left mark, so let me do one more, and then we'll do last words and get out of here. So what I wanted to do was, what did you love about the original Aysle that you wanted to make sure got kept in this version, and did you succeed? Or did mean old Darrell ruin it all?
Well, from my point of view, the way the darkness device was set up was something that was it's similar but more fleshed out now, about how it thinks and how it behaves, and its behavior, its pattern of moving from High Lord to High Lord. So that was something I liked, the way it was kind of mischievous and not particularly loyal to Uthorian in the original one. We managed to hold on to that, and just make it even more interesting. Because one of having tossed some stuff out and putting that focus on what's going on here on Earth, it is really just kind of expanded out that whole relationship between the two into a new avenue, and I just love that we kept that and made it better.
Yeah, and I love that there's a reason that the Gaunt Man gives him that darkness device.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to use this one. Here you go. Good luck.
It was kind of nice to think about that too while I was writing it. maybe Fury now understands that maybe the Gaunt Man, left me with the lemon, like he left me, with the most jerky darkness device of all. And maybe he wasn't giving me power. Maybe he was getting rid of something that was a problem.
Loyalty level decreasing.
So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, especially when you have a darkness device that doesn't even like flip the realm to to where it came from. It's just Aysle is 99% what it was beforehand. It's just, I think maybe the law of honor and corruption may have changed a little bit. It might have been just a plain old honor rule, but who knows? But it doesn't look like anything really changed that much. But in some ways, he kind of used that to his advantage to be able to, kind of corrupt from within.
Yeah. That was always my take on Uthorian, is that when he arrived, like this was the home he never knew he had. Like
yes, he's not originally from Aysle.
Right. Yes, he's not he's basically an Oroshian nightmare or whatever. Yeah. But with the light, the darkness and light that already exists there, like found a way for him to be part of something kind of away from the boss, And I'm particularly amused that he goes about copying the exact same things that the Gaunt Man has done. Like in his own way, he's like creating himself as a Gaunt Man with his own minions and trying to recreate what the Gaunt Man's doing. Maybe not a full understanding of how all that works. Let's see. Any chance in a moment or two of your time read Champion Pledge this week? Absolutely. I don't know the best way to do that. Probably a PM through the Facebook, through the Kickstarter. Thank you, brain. Burp. Probably a PM through the Kickstarter, or we'll exchange email and figure out the best way to talk about that. I should also mention that last I looked, we still had 2 seats open for our Gen Con one. We kind of knew this would be a push because we're doing it like literally right before Gen Con. So, that's fine. But if you're going, think about it. That's the Tharcold adventure, and big things happen in that one. Big, huge things. I also want to do a shout out after this. I am headed over to the Random Worlds chat. I think Deanna's posted a link for that already. Those of you that want to continue and talk with us there via text. Greg, any last thoughts to share with everybody before we wrap up?
Yeah, final thoughts are always hard. We've just talked this game to death at this point, or I should say Aysle to death. And I'm also trying to cling on to things that I know are going to happen and things we plan next book. So I guess my final words are stay tuned. There's a lot more coming.
Dominick?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just this is kind of like the stuff that I really wanted to do. If there, to the point where if Ulisses hadn't come along and actually picked this up and actually run with it, I was like in the middle of trying to take original Torg and like reboot it on my own, but this is a whole lot easier this way, and basically a chance to see things through other people's eyes in a new light. It's just really been a great opportunity for me, and I'm looking forward to maybe getting a chance to get my hands in a couple other things. But
Awesome. So a few last words. One of the questions I saw spin by, and there's a bunch, you guys. I can't answer them all right now, but we can talk about them in the comments. We'll also have another live chat coming up. One of the ones I wanted to mention, someone asked about last year's Gen Con adventure. It is staged. As soon as I get word, it's staged on the internet. As soon as I get word of the link from the Ulisses International guys where it went up, we will share that link to you guys. One way or another, it will go out before Gen Con this year. those that experienced it, yeah, it's a doozy. And if I do say so myself, the next chat we're going to do, I'll post an update tomorrow with where we're going on the chat. I should take a minute, no matter what, and talk about this. A lot of people talking about the dollar versus euro thing. All I'll say about that, it's like, hey, we did it the way we thought would be best. We're always going to find out, well, that there's a better way to do it, fine. I will say, no matter what, if the euro value would unlock something at the end, we will unlock it. So you guys aren't going to get hosed by conversions or anything like that. I'm not going to do it in the middle, because as stuff goes up and down, it gets weird and people get lost on what we unlock or don't. But if the euros would unlock it, it will be unlocked. So you guys don't need to stress about that. Friday, we're going to do a live chat, and we're going to be with Alita Saxon talking about maps and art. I think that'll be really interesting and different. Anyone that's got questions about that side of the operation and how it works. And then our last one, as usual, for the last hour or two of the Kickstarter, will be live on this channel, not talking about anything in specific, just chatting. And hopefully at the end of that, we'll be sending out a backer update with the links to the raw files for everybody. All right, thanks everybody. Good chat. See you in the next one.
Cheers.
Bye.